a gift from the sky above. It's staining with Demoldey. Ow. Yeah, this is a real song.
All right, so before we can start any sort of analysis on Bojack and his relationships, or Diane, or Mr. Peanutbutter, or Princess Carolyn, anyone else, I wanted to first dive into, as I have in the past couple of videos as well, dive into a bit of the context that surrounds the behaviors of some of these characters. And so a large part of that is due to their past. I mean, a lot of relationship theory surrounds this, has evidence of this, that our childhood affects how we are as adults. The way that things happen when we were kids, adolescence, everything like that, like it impacts how we act as adults, because that, how else are we going to know what's right and what's wrong? We see our parents do it. We see our family members do it. We see our friends do it. Everything impacts our knowledge and our preferences. So with that said, I just wanted to take this time to break down some of the intergenerational behaviors, the cycles that I noticed amongst all of these characters, because each character has at least something that happened that causes them to behave the way they do. So the title of this video is about intergenerational trauma, the transmission of it, unhealthy behavior cycles, and I guess like the first kind of phrase that's going to guide this whole video is the phrase that trauma isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility. And so this is the concept, the phrase that what happened to you is not your fault. The fact that you came from a family that, let's say, lower income sort of thing, or even higher income. We can't control who we're born into. We can't control who our parents are. Can't control the environment that we're born into. These are things that happen to us. So, things that happen to us, especially when we're children, we don't have any control over them. We're at the mercy of our parents or caregivers. And so it's important to remember that it's not your fault if bad things happen to you. You didn't have any control when you were a child. Now, that said, unfortunately, that's the reality of life, is that it is your responsibility to deal with these things. So, the fact that something happened to you, let's say, a kid called you fat when you were a kid. Unfortunately, it's now your responsibility to deal with that hurt. There's plenty of traumatic things that happen. We could go into all day into what the definition of trauma is. You know what? Let's just define it for you, okay? So, trauma in psychology is a deeply distressing or disturbing event that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, leading to lasting negative effects on their mental and emotional well-being. So it can be a single event, a series of events perceived as harmful or life-threatening, and it can manifest in different ways: emotional distress, changes in behavior, difficulty with relationships, and other physical symptoms. It can manifest in so many different ways. And it's not my job here to define, for every single person, or make blanket statements like, oh, well, this thing's trauma, this thing really isn't that traumatic. Like, it depends on the person. If it causes distress and changes someone's ability to cope, yeah, that is a trauma. And that distress part, the clinical distress part, that's what's important here. Anyway, I digress. So each one of these characters has had trauma in their lives, things that have affected their ability to cope. And so I wanted to address them in this video because, it makes these characters real. You have, so we're going to go through, we could talk about Todd, but there's not much about Todd's upbringing aside from the fact that he got kicked out. And, they kind of delve into it in the later season about him and his mom, and his father. it's kind of there, but not really there. And there's other supporting characters we could talk about, but I wanted to mainly focus on Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter, Princess Carolyn, and Bojack. And just what each character is coming into the show with. Each character is coming in with a different set of circumstances, a different set of parents, different set of environments in which they grew up in. And so, it affects them in different ways. So I noticed a couple of different themes. A lot of these themes really apply to Bojack since he's the one that we know the most about in terms of his childhood. We see a lot from his mother's point of view, Beatrice. See a lot about her. We see her and Bojack's father. We have a lot about that. We see with Princess Carolyn, there's a lot of backstory there as well. Diane, there's some, not a ton. And then with Mr. Peanut Butter, we see some as well. I mainly just use him as there's a couple of themes that you see from him, but mainly just about the contrast between him and Diane and why there is, some tension there. So the main sort of themes that I noticed, it's a multitude of them. I have 10, but there could be plenty more, and some of these kind of overlap, so apologies if it's not as succinct, but the themes are as this. There's a hatred of self passed down between the generations. There's negative self-talk that is evident. There is substance abuse, intimate partner violence, body dysmorphia, clearly some attachment wounds, which we'll get into more, kind of the avoidant, anxious attachment. Judgment or hurtful remarks, we'll just call it verbal abuse for lack of a better term, because there's a lot of really disrespectful, hurtful things said to a lot of these characters. Family trauma, economic hardship, death, and violence. This is core T, big T stuff. We see a lot with Bojack, Princess Carolyn, a little bit with Diane. Not as much with Mr. Peanut Butter, but this is a big part of the intergenerational trauma, is passing down this emotional weight in between the generations, right? Lack of family identity. This really mainly applies to Diane, but we kind of see it with everyone else. Princess Carolyn especially. We'll get into that. A lack of support, for sure, from a lot of them. Again, Mr. Peanut Butter, maybe not so much. And then number 10, emotional avoidance. We see from a lot of the characters as well. They avoid talking about hard things. They avoid emotional closeness. Or sometimes they are close, but then they pull away. Things get too hard for them. So these are the main themes, thematic motifs within Bojack in terms of intergenerational trauma and the transmission of these things in between generations, and these behaviors that keep happening as a result of childhood. So with that said, let's get into it. Intergenerational trauma in Bojack Horseman. All right, so the first one, this is seen from, in terms of negative self-talk, mainly with Diane and Bojack, which, I think this is why they kind of get each other so well, is because they both are similar they're very similar. I'll just say that, we'll just say that for starters. We'll get into that. We'll talk more about that as it goes on. But they both have insecurities, as do us all. And you see that on full display via negative self-talk. So let's first start, I guess, with Diane. So throughout Diane's life, she grew up with older brothers who were a little bit harsh. She grew up with a mother who was not. Again, as far as we can see, her mother and father were not very kind to her, were not very gentle. The way they spoke to her was disrespectful, wasn't very supportive. as far as we can kind of see. And you see that when Diane comes back. This is the main episode in season 1, where she comes back home because her father passed away. Which, talk about trauma right there. That's tough, and she didn't have a close relationship with him. And she comes back and is immediately mocked by her family. Oh, big Diane, too good for her home, right? There's a lot of shame that happens from her mother, and her brothers aren't very emotionally or open or invested in her. They don't really seem to take many things seriously. I won't call them deadbeats, but they all still live at home. Diane made her way out to California and made a career for herself, and she's intelligent and takes after her father because her dad's a professor at Tufts. We'll get into that later. It appears that there's this disconnect or a lack of love. And, I mean, you would hope for that. I mean, Diane's dad just died. And instead of being cordial and inviting and gentle, like, hey, Diane, our father just died. Like, how are you doing? Are you okay? It's instead met with a lot of apathy, to be honest. I mean, they're watching the game. And the sons, they don't take, the brothers, they don't take life seriously because they drew balls on their father's face, which is funny, because it's a show and it's supposed to be ridiculous. But in real life, it's like, wow, like this is, this is how their family functions. Is, and I'll get more down to number 10, that emotional avoidance. But, they can't even. Come to the funeral. That's how bad it is. We're getting off track. But what I'm trying to say is we see, kind of this hatred of self due to, the things that happened when they were younger. So Diane alludes to it a lot, that she was kind of the nerd. She was bullied. You see it mainly when she's trying to write this book, right? When she talks about damage. And you see all of these negative thoughts that she thinks about herself. She's trying to write this book, and she talks to Princess Carolyn about it. And it's a really powerful thing of, we have all these really, really bad negative experiences from our childhood. And it's, when we talk about baggage, I don't think people really view it with what it is. It's just like emotional debt. We have these bad things that happen to us, and we're expected to carry them. We're expected to just have them in our brain as if it's like a bank account, and we are in the red. And that's what's happening with her. And so she wishes it didn't happen. She's trying to cope with having these bad things happen to her, and so she wants to turn it into literature. She wants to turn it into something positive, because otherwise it hurts to know that it's like, wow, I just have this debt. You want to be able to pay off the debt, or use the debt for something good, right? But I think Princess Carolyn helps Diane realize, like, hey, like, you may not get that, but what you can do is write about this girl. She writes about Ivy Train, right? So in that episode, we really see the depths of Diane's negative self-talk, negative view of self. Whether that's, you see plenty of these illusions, like the bullies who bullied her saying things, and she alludes to it throughout the series, like how they made her eat a lipstick or something, how these bullies like swirled her head in the toilet and stuff like that, right? How she never really fit in, and then her brothers don't make it better. The Cryan video, that is savage. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to throw stones or anything like that, but there's plenty of teasing that happens. I mean, a lot of families operate that way, where they use teasing and making fun of people as a way to show intimacy. Is that right? Is that wrong? It's up to your cultural values, right? Some people view that as respect. Some people don't. So I digress. But that appears to really have had an effect on her. And they bring it up again, and they show Bojack about it, and it really hits a nerve for her. And you see at the bar, Bojack doesn't help things, and he says, "Oh yeah, Diane's not too good for anybody." Blah 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 blah, and she flips out, loses her ish, and cracks a bottle open, like just goes absolutely haywire. Understandably so. She deserves to be respected, and she wasn't. And it just, again, it doesn't appear in her family that they are able to compliment each other, to talk positively about each other, to lift each other up, to say nice things to each other. Instead, it's making fun of each other and roasting each other. And I know a lot of people view roasting each other as again, like I said, like as a sign of like intimacy, but it's unhealthy. You can use it as a joke. You can use it as an irony, like, oh, I love you, so like this is obviously a joke. Like that's why it's so funny, is because it's ironic. It's like, yeah, I'm with you. I get the concept. However, irony can't exist without the truth. So if the truth of this joke is that I'm actually great and awesome, that joke can't land if you don't tell me nice things. I can't laugh about a joke about us not being friends if we're not friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, you might joke around with let's say, person you're dating and be like, "Oh yeah, like you're the ugliest one I've ever seen, bro." Like, I don't know how you're not cracking mirrors all over town. Like, the joke being, obviously you're not ugly. Like, no one in their right mind would ever call you ugly because you are so beautiful. That's the irony. Let me explain comedy for you. Like, but the issue is that if I've never told you you're beautiful, there's no comedic foundation for that joke to stand on. And so I think that's what, Diane's family, but also people in general don't understand, is that like you have to have that soft, secure, positive foundation of compliments and like assurance in order to make a savage joke or a roast. People just go immediately to the roast and assume, oh no, we're chill, it's fine, but it's not fine. You gotta make that foundation. Anyway, I digress. So we see Diane as a lot of negative self-talk. You see, literally on her computer, typing out, "I am bad, I am worthless," and as we learn, she's depressed, and we've seen that throughout the show. She struggles with her depression and finally gets medicated, and it really hits a low point. We see it when she's in Chicago. It's like, ooh, this is really bad. She's been bad before, but has been more functioning, and this illustrates like, okay, like you need help, sort of thing. I mean, she goes to therapy, but this was more of like, hey, like we really need to figure this out. So anyway, Diane has some negative self-talk. Bad feelings about herself, doesn't think she's worth it, doesn't think she's attractive or smart or cool. A lot of things about being cool, being liked, We see that a lot. And her parents don't help her break that cycle, that trend. We see it furthered with Bojack. And this is, the episode, it's a great one, as it really speaks to internal dialogue and how important the way we talk to ourselves is. The episode, where he just calls himself a stupid piece of shit over and over. You stupid piece of shit. What are you doing? Blah, 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 right? There's the concept in psychology of the inner critic. People who have low self-esteem, or even even people who are secure, sometimes have that voice in the back of their head that tells them that they're not good enough. That tells them that, they're bad, they're ugly, they're worthless, all these things that are probably not true. Are majority of the time not true. And we give validity to this little voice because we see it as ourselves. Oh, this is the truth. Like, we wouldn't tell ourselves this if we weren't like based in truth and reality. So that episode specifically, you see that a lot where Bojack says, "I'm a piece of shit, I'm not good," and you see the breakthrough in with Dr. Champ, right? Where Bojack goes to legitimate. Even though Dr. Champ's not a legitimate therapist, like he goes to therapy with him, And he comes to the realization, oh yeah, like I have an internalized hatred of horses given to me by my parents. And it's like, yep, that is exactly what happened. And because, I mean, you think about the words that were said to him from a young age. Bojack, from a very young age, was told he was worthless by his parents. Told by his mother, like, you ruined me. That is such a heavy thing to tell a child. And so his mother, who got pregnant as a teenager, made the decision to keep the baby. Like, she made a choice to have unprotected sex, to do what she did. That's fine. But she messed up by putting her feelings of inadequacy, shame, guilt, whatever, onto her son. And that's why Bojack is the way he is because of that transmission. And where did Beatrice have that? She had a rough childhood. She watched her mother, she watched her uncle be shot and killed, not watched it, but, saw, heard about it, experienced it, her uncle being shot and killed in the war. That was a traumatic event. And because of that, she then saw the emotional degradation of her mother to where her mom then, has an emotional breakdown, loses it. She then has her daughter, she has Beatrice, drive a car at like, whatever it is, 8 years old, crashes, another traumatic event. And then her father gets a lobotomy, a very old school procedure for behavioral health issues. And then, essentially sees the death of her mother. Her mother's personality is gone. And so Beatrice sees a ton of trauma as well. Despite them having a upper class living because of father's job and their old money and all that stuff, there is so much emotional debt that happens that Beatrice doesn't resolve because she gets pregnant when she's a teenager. She doesn't have the time. She's having to raise a kid, and she doesn't go to therapy and get this stuff figured out, and that's a lot of mothers, unfortunately, grandmothers. I mean, but also mothers. They don't seek the help that they need, and so because they haven't resolved their own inner issues, it's then passed on. As I said, the intergenerational transmission is then passed on to their children. They, instead of cutting, a lot of what we talk about is we're the generation that is going to stop, is going to cut the cycle. We're going to be the ones to change the cycle. And so, anyway, Beatrice had the choice to stop the cycle of negative self-talk. I mean, you saw Beatrice's, father in the way that he would talk about her. Oh, why are you reading? Like reading is stupid. Like dolls are stupid. Crying is stupid. Emotions are dumb. Like you shouldn't have them. Like you and your worth, why are you studying? Your worth is only being a housewife. So like cutting her down, Beatrice had the responsibility to end the cycle there, to say, you know what, the way that my father talked to me, the way that my father talked to my mother, I'm not going to do that with my son. Unfortunately, she did. And this is the ramifications of it. So we see it throughout the show. Bojack hates himself. He loathes himself. He doesn't like himself. He's insecure. He's super insecure throughout. Yeah, that's like saying the grass is green, right? I mean, you see it in his negative self-talk. I'm a piece of shit. Nice job getting doll back, you idiot. Like using really negative words, right? Using these harsh words in his inner dialogue. And we see ultimately he starts to get better. As the series goes on, he starts to accept himself. He starts to try and change. Really powerful episode when he goes to Old Town Horseburg and, there's horses there. And he's at the sermon. And he says, peace be with you. He's at in a church event with fellow horses and feels a sense of community with them. And that's a really powerful thing because he hasn't liked himself for so long that, that's what he's trying to do. So, at any rate, yeah. So I think, how does this affect his relationships? Well, I mean, we could get into this later, but when someone's insecure, it's really hard to be in a relationship with them because they need to come to the security themselves. They need to do their own work to be secure within themselves, and you can provide as much reassurance and you can compliment them to your blue in the face. You can provide them with a safe place to feel their feelings, to listen to them, everything. But they have to do that internal work to work on themselves, and that's easier said than done. So, at any rate, yeah, we really see it with Diane and Bojack. Just these negative feelings of I'm worthless, I'm not good enough, and it's up to them to work through their issues. So, at any rate, I digress. Let's go on to theme number 2, substance abuse. If there's anything that's prevalent in so many characters, it is the abuse of substances. A lot of it, admittedly, for comedic effect, but I mean the use of alcohol as a numbing agent, as a thing that people use to, like numb the pain or get away from their problems, to have fun. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of that too. Like, oh, we're having fun, let's have a drink, whatever. But there's a lot of times where you see when people are spiraling, when people are having issues, they turn to alcohol, and oftentimes it makes it worse. So the reason why I put this on here is because we don't really see this with Diane. We don't really see this with anyone else, but we see with we see this with Princess Carolyn and with Bojack. You see it with PC where, she comes home and her mom is like a little bit drunk. Her mom probably has substance use disorder, otherwise, which encapsulates like all substances, not just alcohol, but alcohol is included, alcohol use disorder. You see it with Princess Carolyn's mom, where she's having to take care of a household or, deal with her issues. She's a single mom, and Princess Carolyn has to be there to take care of her. And, Princess Carolyn has to grow up quick. She has to take care of her mom. She's the one being the maid for this wealthy family, even though that's her mom's job. But her mom is drinking herself to sleep, and it's hard. So we see that with PC, where during her spirals, during her negative moments, she also gets drunk too. Where she was pregnant and then finds out she's not, or any sort of other life, a lot of it revolving around her either career or having a baby or relationships. You saw with her and Todd, gone baby gone baby never was, like that sort of moment. Like, she's drunk, and so she's again perpetuating the cycle, of her mom, using alcohol as a way to cope with what's going on. We see it, I guess the other person we kind of see it with is Sarah Lynn. Now, that's not necessarily intergenerational. We don't really see that with her mother. But you see it with Bojack, and that kind of transfers on to Sarah Lynn. So Bojack and his relationship with alcohol, Bojack has an alcohol use disorder. He has substance use disorder. It is clear as day, not even close. And the issue is because it started from such a young age. We see multiple times where he experiments with alcohol. Both of his parents are, you see Beatrice, drunk, sleeping, and he goes and drinks some vodka. You see it with the cigarette, even. He saw Secretariat smoking on the TV, and instead of, this moment was so key because Beatrice had a chance to remedy, to teach, to support her son, to say, hey, Bojack, you should not be smoking cigarettes. They're really harmful for you. like, I want you to not use substances in the future or whatever. But instead, she like shames him and says, "No, you're going to finish that cigarette. I'm going to teach you a lesson. Don't you ever do that," sort of thing, right? It's a punishment instead of, a learning lesson. Bojack's dad also, gives Bojack a drink when he's, kind of a preteen, as like, oh, this is, you know, a way for us to bond. And think about that time he had a drink with him. He caught his dad cheating on his mom. So alcohol is always going to have this really negative association for Bojack. And you saw it at the party too, where Bojack was feeling awkward and uncomfortable, and then he drinks beer as a teenager, and then he changes personalities. Inhibitions are lowered, and so he feels, that social anxiety goes away. That's why a lot of people drink. They can't handle the anxiety they feel when they're in front of groups. They can't really socialize very well. So they drink, they lower their inhibitions, they feel better. And then Bojack, you start to see, turns into kind of a dick, where he's making fun of Katie and making fun of other people and, changing his personality. And so we see it throughout the show. It's not, I don't even want to talk about it because it's just so evident that alcohol is a thing that is used as a way to numb, and drugs too, for the matter. I mean, we see multiple benders from Bojack where he's trying to run away from his problems, and he just goes on a crazy bender with Sarah Lynn. And who's the person that, Bojack is responsible for Sarah Lynn getting hooked and for Sarah Lynn's death. I mean, you want to talk about trauma, like, Bojack was there for Sarah Lynn's death, and it's because of substances. So yeah, I think that again, the generational trauma of alcohol as a way to cope should have stopped at Bojack. It should have stopped when you saw in when Beatrice's mother starts like having an emotional breakdown. She goes to the little barn and then gets drunk, drinks a lot. And so Beatrice sees that and says, all right, well, if I'm, feeling emotionally whatever, then I'm going to drink too. And then Bojack does the same as well. Again, transmitted between the generations. And so he feels a lot of regret because when he was horsing around, he starts drinking as well. And then Sarah Lynn gets her hands on alcohol, and then that also devolves. And Bojack, again, I don't know if proliferates is the right word, but just kind of like continues, enables the behavior. And so, that's really the issue, is that there's no stopping of the cycle. Beatrice could have stopped it. Bojack, could have stopped at Bojack, but it didn't, unfortunately. So that's how we see it. Is it's passed down. His father was drank a lot, and used it kind of as a bonding thing. And you even see it when Bojack starts to get sober. It's like these little snippets into alcohol throughout his life are why it's so hard to quit. It's because it's been so ingrained in him from a young age. So, at any rate, that is theme number 2, substance abuse. Well, actually, hold on. I also want to say, you even see with Diane, too. Now, we don't see it much with Diane's parents, but you do see Diane abuse alcohol as well. So many times, I mean, she's on Bojack's couch, they got like 50 beers, and she's drunk, and she's, drinking all the time off her ass. When her and Mr. Peanutbutter's marriage is falling apart, she's drinking as well. Again, this common theme of alcohol to help numb the pain throughout this episode, throughout the series, shall I say. So, anyway, now I'm done. But yeah, alcohol, number 2. All right, number 3, intimate partner violence. So, we really we really see this with BoJack again. That's that's kind of the most generations we see. PC, no, not a lot of violence with her. With Diane, Diane can sometimes be violent, but we don't really see that from her mom or dad. But she does have, she does act violently sometimes, and Mr. Peanut Butter also can use violence too. So they both are guilty of being violent with each other. You see it with the first time where with the campaign where they fight and Mr. Peanut Butter gets really angry and pushes Diane against the wall. Diane throws the computer, breaks the mug, all of that, which is passionate because then they start having sex, but they both are guilty of using violence against each other. You see with BoJack, the number one scene or incident that people will turn to is the scene with Gina, where he chokes her and almost kills her. Now, yes, he was addicted to opioids. He was in a bad place. He was I don't know if he was on withdrawals or whatever was happening, but he almost killed Gina. That was an assault. He should have been in jail. There's no excusing what he did. It was a terrible thing, horrible thing. I only bring this up as in this isn't the first time that BoJack has put hands on people he cares about or people he's romantic with. You see it with Diane. You see it with Wanda, and with Gina before even the strangling, where BoJack punches the wall with Gina, or where Wanda tries to leave and he grabs both Diane and Wanda. He grabs their arms, don't leave, and then Diane's like, "You're hurting me." That again, both those behaviors not okay. It's not right to put hands on anyone else that is unwanted. That's assault. That's how it works. Battery, whatever the legal terms are, right? So we see that multiple times from BoJack, where he puts hands on women because he's afraid they're going to leave, and also assaults Gina. And so where does this come from? Well, again, this intergenerational transmission of violent behaviors is throughout time. You see with Beatrice, Beatrice was hit. There was some violence there with Beatrice's father and mother, shaking her, saying, "What's wrong with you?" Also getting her lobotomized. That is as violent as you can get, making your wife have part of her brain removed. That's not great. And then, you see BoJack get hit plenty of times. Smacked around, yelled at. There's a lack of emotional safety, lack of physical safety for sure. And so that is where that comes from. So again, who's to blame? You guys, shouldn't have started in the first place. Beatrice's father should not have put hands on her, should not have put hands on his wife. Should have ended there. But then Beatrice thought that was okay. Oh, well, they smacked, me. They smacked, my mom, so I'm going to do it to my son as a way of punishment. And then you see BoJack as well, using physical force to try and get what he wants in his romantic relationships. Now, BoJack isn't necessarily violent with others, that is, like Todd or Mr. Peanut Butter or anything like that, but it's especially concerning with his romantic partners, because we see it boil over with Gina, where he's out of control and almost kills her. So, yeah, so we see with that. The Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter stuff a little bit more interesting because, like, with Mr. Peanut Butter, there really was no precedent for that. And we could talk about that more when we talk about them. But, yeah, just an important thing that's passed down through the generations is, you saw it with Beatrice's parents. Poor conflict resolution. Violence was used, demeaning language was used, force was used to solve issues. And so she thought that was okay, puts it on to Bojack. Bojack thinks it's okay. Monkey see, monkey do. That is human behavior simplified. It's not all of it, but it is some of it. So, anyway, moving on to number 4, body dysmorphia. Along with just like negative things said from Beatrice, there is you see it with throughout the show, just about body image and how, especially in Hollywood, how body image is a lot of a person's importance. Women are very harshly judged on their bodies. And so we see it come to light. There's some of it throughout the series with Bojack, not a ton. I mean, he has insecurities. He's got body dysmorphia. He thinks he's fat. He struggles with his weight, his own image in his body. But we really see it with Hollyhock, where Beatrice essentially drugs Hollyhock with a weight loss drug, and Hollyhock loses a ton of weight, an unhealthy amount of weight, and eventually faints and passes out and has to go to the hospital. You hear Beatrice say demeaning phrases of "nobody likes a fatty patty," right? These little comments are not healthy. They are not good, and it is passed down onto Bojack. Part of that, again, because of Beatrice's father. The idea that, you must be beautiful, you must look good so that you can have a husband. That is your role as a woman, is to look good. And so you see it being passed on that Beatrice is trying to get Hollyhock to be thin, and that her value as a woman is being thin. So it's an unfortunate thing we see, and Bojack really could use some help in that area to feel confident with his body. Sometimes you see strides with him, but ultimately, it's unfortunate because Hollyhock is caught in the crossfire, and Bojack feels bad, especially because his mom has claimed that she has dementia, but ultimately, it's like, she knew what she was doing with this. Not great. More of the body dysmorphia. I mean, you see it with Bojack when he's eating the Oreo. He's like, "Oh, you dumb piece of shit! You're eating an Oreo, you're so fat." Or plenty of times with he's got disordered eating, where he eats food and feels bad about it, and just I mean, he probably has a binge eating disorder. I mean, he does. You see it so many times throughout the series where he eats so much food and gorges himself. Just eats way more than he should. I mean, the cotton candy, for example. He just always is eating cotton candy, right? So, body dysmorphia, a definite theme within Bojack. All right, number 5, avoidant and anxious attachment. So let's just define the attachment styles. I'll put it right here on the screen. So you got secure, anxious, dismissive, apologies. Secure, anxious, avoidant, dismissive, and avoidant, fearful. So secure, basically you gotta be a unicorn. I don't know anybody on this earth, myself included, that should or can say that they're a securely attached person. I don't know, to me that just doesn't sound like that's true. You would have had to live a perfect life for that to be accurate. But if you are, shout out to you. Congrats, you lived a good life. Most people fall into one of the other 3 categories. So we see it with the intergenerational stuff where, there's attachment wounds, as they're called, that happen between the offspring, the child, and the parent, where the offspring needed something and the parent wasn't there to give it to them, or gave it to them inconsistently, right? So with Diane, doesn't seem like there was a lot of emotional safety at her house. So because of that, she really struggles with internal sense of self. She can't get emotionally close to people. She struggles with emotional closeness. We'll get to that later, but she's very avoidant. You have Mr. Peanutbutter, who, can we call him secure? I don't think so. But I'd say maybe he's more, I don't know, maybe more on the anxious side. But he shows Diane love, and Diane has trouble accepting it. She's often fearful about it, like, pulls away when things get too hot, right? And so that's because, she couldn't really rely on people when she was younger. She couldn't rely on her family to give her what she needed. Same thing for Bojack. Bojack definitely anxious, needs reassurance constantly. Can't really communicate his needs. Very sensitive to changes. Why'd you say that? Why'd you do that? Constantly we see Bojack's really heightened sensitivity to any sort of perceived, oh, you're going to leave me, you're going to abandon me, that sort of thing, and feels a need for control. We see it throughout the season where Beatrice, Bojack's mom, is living with them. And Hollyhock is trying to treat Beatrice with respect and love and being nice and careful, caring for her. And Bojack is pissed. He doesn't like that she's doing that. And it's like, why is that? Well, because she treated him poorly when they were younger. He has attachment wounds that he has not addressed. He's not talked to her about specifically, or maybe he's tried and it hasn't gone anywhere. Or, he is not okay with it. He hasn't moved on from it. And he shows Beatrice, that he's pissed. And, drinks both orange juices right in front of her and, puts her in a bad nursing home and doesn't care about her, things like that. Wants her to know, hey, you effed up. And is mad at Hollyhock for Hollyhock being nice to her, because it's like, you're siding with the enemy. You're giving love to someone who doesn't deserve it, someone who hurt me growing up. And so it's a big issue. It's a big issue that, they needed family therapy for. They should have gone, him and his mom should have gone to therapy and be like, hey, let's sort this stuff out, because it definitely affects Bojack and his ability to get close. And same thing with Diane. She didn't have a close relationship with her family, couldn't trust anybody. Her brothers were super mean, so she avoids any sort of closeness because it's uncomfortable for her, right? She's never, as she said, never been good with words. Because why? Because as a kid, that was never communicated. You can't expect people to have vocabulary when they were never taught the language. That's the bottom line. So, anyway. We see, Bojack throughout trying to make up for these attachment styles, and we'll go to crazy lengths, humorously, crazy lengths to get assurance, or even to maybe to go away from it. Which, as we know, is called being a vacillator. We'll put the definition on the screen right now. But Bojack definitely like a huge vacillator. I mean, the guy, he would love to be close to people, and he does that. He has very intimate moments with a lot of people. But as soon as they get close to him, bam, I'm out. He runs away. Can't handle it. But then with people in his life, he seeks constant reassurance, constantly. Oh, so you think I'm fat? Oh, so you think I wasn't good in that? You think I'm ugly? Whatever. All the time. It's just insecure, insecurely attached from the childhood. His mom constantly put him down, never made him feel good. He doesn't have a strong sense of self because of that. So, at any rate, moving on to number 6, judgment hurtful remarks or verbal abuse, whatever you want to say. A lot of intergenerational stuff here. Again, we saw it. I mentioned it earlier with Beatrice's father, putting her down, saying things she liked were dumb. And Beatrice also has that from other kids in her school. She was bullied. She was bullied as a kid. Diane was bullied. And so, Bojack is inherently insecure because he was put down. And these remarks, it's not even just about childhood, but they continue throughout. Diane called Cryan by her brothers. That's not great. Her mother continually making fun of her, putting her down. Beatrice isn't supportive of Bojack's show. Will put him down constantly, making these little passive-aggressive remarks. And that's why I said earlier about, the lack of... It's not just the lack of... it's both. It's a lack of positivity, but it's also these really hurtful remarks. Like, there's a lot of times where parents might feel that, oh, well, I'm telling you this because I love you. Like, I'm telling you this because I'm honest with you. The world is just going to kiss your ass, like, blah, blah, blah. But, like, you need to have positive things to say. Because, like, if all I hear from you is negative stuff, I'm going to believe that's the truth. I'm going to believe that that is how the world sees me because you told me. I view you, my parent, authority figure, as someone to trust that's going to tell me the truth. And if all you tell me is you're not good enough, you're bad, you're this, that, you eventually believe it. And so that's what we see. And it's just some rude comments, hurtful remarks. And then Bojack does it too. Bojack perpetuates it, says these things to his friends. With Todd, right? Pick up your shit, Todd, you're a piece of shit. Todd, your rock opera, was worse than 10 9/11s, right? Where do you think Bojack got this from? From his parents, from his mother specifically. I mean, his father also very abusive verbally, telling him things that were, not nice, not kind. So yeah, how can Bojack be expected to be kind when he never was taught how to be kind? He was only taught how to be an asshole. He was only taught to be a sarcastic dick. And the issue is that Bojack continues. He doesn't recognize that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be putting my friends down all the time who I care about. Maybe I should be excited for them. Maybe I should, if I'm going to ever express critique or feedback, to do it in a healthy way instead of ripping someone a new one. You can be honest without being hurtful. So, moving on, number 7. This is a big one. This is one that a lot of people struggle with, but we see it throughout Bojack for sure, is family trauma, economic hardship, death, and violence. All 4 of the characters that I was talking about see this. So let's just start with Mr. Peanut Butter because he is the least. Mr. Peanut Butter, it's funny because, it's a classic dog. Like, oh no, like dogs go to the farm. Like, they're not dead, they're on the farm. So, like, he doesn't realize that both of his parents are dead. Mr. Peanut Butter kind of lives in this, like, utopia, if you will. Like, nothing bad ever happens on the Labrador Peninsula. And so there's not a lot of that happens. And so when he deals with death for the first time, like, oh, my dad's dead, my mom's dead, it's hard for him. So it's an interesting kind of thing to happen. And it's also why it's so difficult for him to accept when his brother has this medical condition, right? And so, at any rate, that's an interesting kind of little thing that happened. But in terms of all the other stuff, family trauma, Bojack's family is rife with it. Let me get on the other people, and then I'll talk about it. So with let's go to Princess Carolyn, right? Or even Diane. Like Diane, in terms of, family history, not a lot's known about her ancestors or, her grandparents or anything like that. And that's an issue. We'll get to that in the next one. But we don't really know much about it. We just know that, in terms of like hardship, like maybe they didn't grow up super wealthy. That might have been something. Not entirely sure. But obviously she has to deal with death. And like that sucks and clearly wasn't handled very well. If her brothers are, drawing on her dad's face and not putting his body in the proper morgue or, grounding him up into chum. I think what's interesting is that there clearly is a disconnect between Diane and her family where they live a certain way and Diane is just not that at all. She's just like so disconnected from them. Princess Carolyn has a little bit more of this economic hardship, 7 or however many brothers and sisters she had living in that little small house. Family's divorced. We don't know exactly the relationship between Princess Carolyn and her father, but she lives with her mom because that's all she's got. Without me, my mom would have nobody, right? We see this in that episode where she goes back to North Carolina, where it's a classic story of small town, where the mom wasn't really educated, doesn't really believe in education, and thinks that like, oh, if you are, because Princess Carolyn gets is pregnant, is pregnant by the son of the house, and so it's like, oh, that's the meal ticket, right? That's what her mom thinks is like how this antiquated idea of like you marry a rich man and he's going to take care of you because he has money and that's what your role in life is going to be. And then she has a miscarriage and her mom shames her for it. Instead of providing her with comfort, she's shamed and she's upset and like, oh, that you were our golden ticket. And she says, I'm sorry. And that is so much to put on a child that like her mom should have accepted. It's like, hey, these things happen. This isn't my fault. But not to mention, like, you're the mother. Yeah, you got divorced. That's hard. But like, your kids rely on you economically. You need to get your problems straight, and you need to provide for them. You should not be relying on them to get pregnant and provide for you. It's not fair. So anyway, we see that with with Princess Carolyn, that she had to make the tough choice that a lot of people from these ho-dunk towns have to make, where you get an opportunity to better your life through education, to go west, to move to a new place, and a lot of people would have stayed home. Princess Carolyn's mom is there trying to convince her to stay. Oh, wait another year. California's not going anywhere. And PC she makes the tough choice and she leaves. And she was better for having done that. But the economic hardship she went through as a kid, like that did make her resilient and strong. But it is a trauma she has to deal with because she's working. Because she grew up poor, she doesn't know safety. She doesn't know what safety really looks like. And because like she doesn't want to go back to being poor again, she's going to work her ass off more to an unhealthy degree than anyone else because she doesn't know anything else. She doesn't know what it is to be safe. Because when you grow up poor, you feel like even if you had, like, there's never enough money. There's never enough money to make you feel safe. And so I think that's what she struggles with is like, I'll be okay, like if you look at Princess Carolyn's like, oh, you have an apartment, you have a job, you're going to be okay. But she can't accept that. She like has to keep working. So that's kind of how it affects her. Family trauma, I mean, even with PC, a divorce, that's hard on the family. All of her brothers and sisters are gone. Doesn't seem like the support system's there. Definitely can affect her, for sure. Her mom died also. Doesn't have any relatives. Doesn't seem like she's close to her family. That's tough, too. Also, the miscarriages. I mean, let's just talk about that. Like, that's hard on anyone. Whatever you want to say the word is, right? It is death, right? It is the ending of the potential of life. I'm not making an abortion stance here. I'm pro-choice, for the record. But I'm saying, like, the law, like a miscarriage is really hard. Yeah, the baby wasn't born, but it still hurts. It's still almost like you lost someone. You know, it's still exactly the same feelings of grief, right? So, anyway, another thing about Princess Carolyn too is the family history, right? And eventually finding out that was a lie. And we could kind of transition into the lack of family identity here too, but like PC is fed this story from her mother. You know, it's kind of like with Phoebe and her grandma. Her grandma doesn't have the heart to tell Phoebe all these things about like her mother, that her mother like wasn't great, and you know, so she has to lie. You know, yeah, like Nestle Toulouse, right? You know, that's who she got this recipe from. And so you kind of see that with PC, where she has this necklace that's like, oh, it's gold plated. It's from the old country. You know, all of our, you know, cat ancestors were immigrants, and this, that, and the other. And eventually she finds out like that was a total lie. So it's tough. It's tough to learn that. But you think about it, you know, that's a source of pride for her. Again, like back to the resilience thing. You know, she imagines her great 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 granddaughter giving this speech, and you know, Princess Carolyn, I'm sure probably came, you know, from Russian immigrants. Were they, you know, the finest electricians, yada yada? Maybe so, but I guess it just like illustrates like how far she's come, to where she is today, owning her own company. You know, it's very impressive, but it's hard on her, and that's the point. Is she wants to end the cycle by giving her daughter the best situation possible, so that she doesn't have to, you know, suffer and then go through hardship like her ancestors did. And so that's, you know, shout out to PC for doing that, right? Transitioning to the lack of family identity. You know, this is, the lies, definitely hard for PC to kind of swallow, that her mom lied to her and that these stories of the old country weren't true. It's tough. It's tough, and it happens a lot. You know, people don't want to. They want to be told the story. They want to think, I'm special. Like I come from a line of like great people, but in reality, it's not. You know, truth isn't as good, right? We see. I mainly put this on here for Diane. We see Bojack reconnecting with his family identity. Unfortunately, a lot of it was stolen away because of his father. His father not wanting to work at the for her dad, and like squandering all the money. You know, where Beatrice like has no money because his dad ruined it, and it's really unfortunate. You know, they could have been the Sugarmans. They could have been, you know, this great empire. I mean, you even see it with, you know, Corbin Creamerman, right? Like the fact that Beatrice chose to be with Bojack's dad instead. You know, that's how things changed, and the identity got lost, I guess, or changed. But we see it mostly with Diane, where she doesn't know where she came from. And this is a feeling a lot of immigrant children feel when they're born in the United States. It's, who am I? You know, I'm from this, you know, my parents are from this other country. My grandparents are from this other country. They're not from the United States. Like, who am I? Am I Vietnamese? And she, you know, she talks about it beautifully. When she goes back to Vietnam in that episode and says, you know, I feel like a tourist. You know, I put on this traditional garb and I feel like a tourist. And it sucks because this is, again, another generational thing that happens because her father, you know, she asked pointedly, where are we from? What are we like? Her father is a professor of Vietnamese culture and heritage and history. And he won't share these traditions with his daughter. And that is a major inconvenience. It's a bad thing, for lack of a better term. You know, it's major hindrance on Diane because she wants to know where she comes from. Like, everyone wants to have an identity. They want to know who they are. And her father not giving her that was hard for her. And she goes back, to Vietnam and sees what it's like, and kind of tries to come to grips with the idea that, hey, I'm not from here, but maybe that's okay. So that's a bit of the transmission. It's just like, we could have, as much as trauma's transmitted, you can also pass on good things too. Like, hey, we have this thing from our culture where we do this thing that's really healthy and connecting or whatever. And it just doesn't really happen. All right, number 9, lack of support. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just about not saying bad things. It's also about saying good things. You got to say good things. You got to be supportive. But we see throughout the show, there's just such a lack of support with Diane. We don't really see her. Her mom's not very supportive of her writing career. Kind of demeans her for it. Oh, look at fancy Diane. She thinks we're better. She's better than us. Not very supportive. It's not what a parent should do. Parent. What do you say instead? Hey, Diane, I heard you wrote that book. That's awesome. I'm really proud of you. Bam. But she can't say that. You see with even Princess Carolyn, her mom not giving her support in her multiple times of need, whether that's providing for her financial support, but even emotional support. Princess Carolyn has a miscarriage, and her mother demeans her. Her mother shames her as like, this was a meal ticket, you blew it. You blew it. Not meeting her with empathy, not meeting her with kindness and sensitivity, which she deserved in the moment. And so, it was really unfortunate to see that, because PC deserved love and support and tenderness and gentleness, and her mom doesn't give it to her, and it's really sad, So, in that moment, she was really looking for support, and she didn't get it, and that was a shame. But PC turns it around. PC does the work to be like, I'm going to be there for my daughter. I'm going to work my ass off to give my daughter a better life. You see it also with her decision to leave home and go to California. Like her mom, again, should have seen big picture, like, my daughter's capable of doing great things. And instead, she's jealous and insecure and wants her daughter to stay because she's selfish. I mean, Princess Carolyn's mom, should have been supportive and said, hey, you got this dream, go chase it, go kill it. I believe in you, I'm here to support you. But she doesn't. She makes her feel bad, tries to guilt trip her to stay. It's emotional manipulation, and it's unfortunate. Because, again, like I said, Princess Carolyn deserved that support, and instead she has to make the heartbreaking choice to leave her mom. That's the issue, is that our kids are gonna grow up and do great things, and you have to let them do it. As much as it hurts to not see them, they have to fly. You have to let the little birds fly, right? So we see that with PC. We see that with Diane, lack of support. And we see that with Bojack for sure. Bojack does some great things. He's a great actor, has his own TV show, makes millions, and his mother refuses to support him. Oh, yeah, and I watched your show. Oh, I read your book. Like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's not good. And my whole thing, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. But it's like, the issue with the people we care about is, like, their words matter so much more than anyone else's. You could have, 10 million people say that, what you did was awesome. But if your mother says your stuff was bad, it breaks your heart. Because that's the one person you cared about liking it. I don't think, in this instance, Bojack's mom really understood the power she has. And again, intergenerational. Comes from her father not being supportive of her dreams. Oh, I sent you to wherever, Wesleyan, to get an MRS, but instead you got a BS. You got a bachelor's and a mouthful of sass, right? Hilarious line, but Point is, Beatrice deserved support. Beatrice deserved to be supported in her dreams to get an education. But instead, her father was promoting these old ideals on her, yada, yada. So the same thing happens for Bojack. And to be honest, I think a lot of it's Beatrice's insecurity. She sees Bojack doing something she never did, which is have a career and not be, stay-at-home wife. And she's jealous. She can't, she's insecure. Insecure people struggle to be happy for others. They're jealous and they struggle to be happy when someone else does something awesome. And so we see that, and it's unfortunate. And Bojack does that too. He continues the trend with everyone. He tries to belittle everyone's accomplishments. I mean, we see with Todd. He purposely messes up his rock opera, tries to put him down, doesn't support him, doesn't come to, his improv stuff or anything like that. We see it towards the end that Bojack starts to change, where he starts supporting Hollyhock. He starts, and then he also experiences when someone doesn't come to support him, when Hollyhock doesn't support him, and he feels that pain. And so it's just interesting, to see how he changes. Because he then, he realizes over the years, like, wow, like, I wish I had that support, So, number 10, the final one of this part, emotional avoidance. A lot of these characters really uncomfortable with getting close, really uncomfortable with being vulnerable, and they do it, they show their uncomfortability in many ways. Let's start first with Mr. Peanut Butter. The classic textbook example of like the white picket fence, perfect life people. Clearly grew up privileged, had money, no crime, nothing bad ever happens on Labrador Peninsula, right? They're on this utopia. And so when something bad happens, he wants to avoid it. He wants to pretend like it doesn't happen. He can't deal with, he has no resilience. Peanut Butter has no resilience. And so he can't deal with negative things happening. So that's why when his brother's spleen thing happens, he avoids it. He tries to avoid the conflict and gets mad. And we'll get into this later, but reacts inappropriately to Diane. Diane wants to be there for him, saying, hey, I think it's really important we talk about this. And instead he reacts harshly. He yells at Diane and says, just because my family wasn't yours, I don't have to like talk about every shitty thing, blah, 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 blah. And that wasn't the right way to go about it. So, he avoids emotional conflict because his life's always been good. He's a positive person, which, shout out, but he struggles with being real. He gets depressed. He cries when he finds out his mom died, right? And that's okay. It's okay to not have resilience, but like it's something that you need to work on. You need to work on being able to express yourself and deal with harsh realities of the world. Same token, within Diane, she also avoids being emotional too. I mean, we see it in the therapy sessions, right? Where she can't express herself. And where, she does drugs and it's like, I'm bad at talking about my feelings. But drugs help, right? So this is the case for a lot of people. They really avoid opening up. It's really difficult. They don't have the language, etc. And we see it with Bojack as well. I mean, he doesn't cry in front of people. He cries a couple times in the series, and breaks your heart. He cries outside of the Nixon Library when he's smoking a cig, and it's the first time we ever really see him be fully vulnerable, right? So that happens. Another key scene I want to bring up is when he says "I love you," or he says "love ya" to Wanda. It shows he wants to get close to someone. It's funny when they go on their date. He's like, "Would you like to go to Disneyland?" Like he just can't. He's so not used to people being close to him. But he wants to. But he can't handle it. And so that's why he runs away, hilariously. Or, when in all of his relationships, he runs away. He can't handle being close. He hasn't, because he hasn't been that way. His parents were never close to him. He never felt that emotional safety. Their parents never felt that emotional safety. And so it continues with Bojack, for sure. And so, yeah, it results in him being uncomfortable with closeness, despite wanting it desperately. It's this vacillator, right? Like this person that wants to be close but can't. You see it when he's with Hollyhock. He like wants to put his hand on her shoulder. He's like, maybe not, Or trying to remain cool when they get close, and or like when she says "I love you" and he can't say "I love you" back. Such a quintessential scene because it shows that he struggles with closeness. It's just uncomfortable because he's never felt that. He's never had his parents tell him that they love him. But something's working on, right? But yeah, I think Bojack is the king of when bad things happen, he runs. He can't handle his feelings, right? Always getting out of LA, going on benders. I mean, we talked about it earlier, but he emotionally avoids by running and by drinking and by escaping. We saw it where Diane does this too. But Bojack can't deal with his feelings and goes to Michigan. He goes to New Mexico. He goes to Ohio. He runs away. Always running away. And Diane does that too with Mr. Peanut Butter. I mean, she goes to Cordovia because she can't handle the monotony of her relationship. Her relationship maybe not being great. And then she can't handle being in Cordovia. It's war-torn. That's traumatic. And so she comes home but doesn't tell her husband. And so she's avoiding the conflict that's going to come by going home. And so she stays at Bojack's house and lies the whole time. And you even see it with Bojack when he's out in Michigan. Diane's trying to say, hey, are you okay? He, always declines her calls. So, that's the funny, why does Bojack do that, right? Well, what does his grandfather say? I'm a 1940s man, and I'm ill-equipped to handle the emotional complexities of women, so I'm just going to leave, And so that's the perfect example. Our grandfathers, Bojack's grandfather, didn't know how to handle emotion. He did not have the emotional tools to sit with someone in the uncomfortability and provide emotional support. He ran away. He left the house when he was needed. Bojack's mom then did the same thing to Bojack, was not there for him when he needed her. So, what does he do? He runs away when he's needed by someone or when he's overwhelmed. So, yeah. Suffice to say, we're all impacted by our families. And if you think you're not, take a closer look, big dog. We do so much stuff. Things are passed on from generation to generation. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can't change how we're raised. That's our parents' job. But we can change how our children are raised. So we have a choice in how they're raised and how and if we continue these trends or not. So word of the wise, just make sure you are able to stop these trends from happening. We're the generation. We got to stop this trauma. We got to stop these bad things from continuing because we're smart. We're smart now. We know what's up. It's up to us to be better. So anyway, that is intergenerational trauma, transmission, and unhealthy behavioral cycles within Bojack Horseman.
From the sky above, it's